What is going on, superhero fans? Welcome to my 2017 Justice League movie review, where from the beginning I want to let you guys know that this video is going to contain spoilers for the Justice League movie. So if you guys have not seen the film, then I highly encourage you guys to watch the film before we dive any further into this video, as director Zack Snyder had given us the long-awaited fan dream in witnessing Batman, Wonder Woman, The Flash, Cyborg, and Aquaman all converging at the same place, being there at the exact same time, formulating the Justice League. Now, as the film opens up, it's heavily established that the overall narrative of this film is going to primarily focus on Superman's death and how it affected the overall world as we carried on forward. And the reason for that is because ever since following Batman vs Superman, specifically with the scene of Doomsday killing Superman off in that film, we open up the Justice League movie with the sense of remorse and guilt, not only stemming from Ben Affleck, but we feel that vibe and that tension come from various different places, including Metropolis and of course Gotham. And with that, it's established that Bruce Wayne is trying to formulate a team due to the idea that he's trying to study the Parademons, which of course we've seen in the previous movie emerge towards the end, and now these Parademons seem to be surrounding and engulfing certain places in the world, certain cities, looking for specific items, and of course with Bruce Wayne having to capture one, we get to see how early on he's trying to pick up on these patterns that he caught on from the Parademons and what they're up to and what they're looking for, and eventually enough we understand that these Parademons are after these mother boxes, these 3 boxes that contain almost essentially infinite power. Now, as the story establishes itself, we get to meet characters like, of course, the Aquaman, the Flash, we have the reintroduction of Wonder Woman, and I will say that Barry Allen and Arthur Curry, to me, I think were showcased greatly in the film. I personally gravitated more towards Barry Allen's character, aka the Flash, as there was comedy behind his character, but it was necessary at certain key points that established his character that much more, I would say, than anybody else's. The Aquaman per se, I would have loved to see Jason Momoa play that character a bit more in the film, as I don't personally believe that we saw enough of Aquaman in this movie, and then of course having to follow with Victor Stone, aka Cyborg, played by Ray Fisher, who also, in my opinion, portrayed the Cyborg character very well in this film. I just felt as if specific characters didn't get enough airtime as some of the others, but nonetheless, the overall mission for Bruce Wayne is to establish a team that consists of the same characters we left off with in Batman v Superman, which of course was the Flash, the Aquaman, and Cyborg. Now, when looking at the characters themselves, I will say, in my opinion, they were very well established in this film in being introduced in different ways and showing off different personalities. So I will say, when it comes to character development, I feel personally that the movie had done a great job in introducing Flash, Aquaman, and Cyborg in the film. Now, of course, in terms of the Parademons weren't anything to, keep a note of or just fear itself, because the real antagonist was actually Steppenwolf. Now, Steppenwolf is in fact related to, of course, Darkseid, who is slated to be the Thanos of the DC universe, a very powerful being, and I felt as if Steppenwolf's character in this movie kind of went flat in the idea that the only thing he was after was, of course, the 3 mother boxes, in grabbing all 3 of them and connecting them into one and establishing a world of darkness. Now, as the movie continued on forward, I will say the overall interaction between each of our characters and the Parademons were pretty cool, and I do think that Bruce Wayne's character, as compared to Batman v Superman, was a bit more lighthearted. He wasn't as grumpy and as vile and angry as he was in the previous film, but of course it centers around Bruce Wayne having to gather this team in order to fight against the inevitable apocalypse, which we already know that Steppenwolf is trying to open up the floodgates in essentially destroying the world and establishing himself as being once again a superior being, as we understand based on history alone that Steppenwolf had actually waged war against the Atlanteans, the Amazonians, even the Green Lanterns, as we get to see them momentarily featured in this film, which kind of gives me hope, especially going based off of the ending, that more characters are going to be introduced in the future, possibly Martian Manhunter, possibly the Green Lantern, but nevertheless, Steppenwolf as a character, when he was first introduced, kind of seemed a bit vile at first with his intentions, and ultimately legitimately enough, when going up against the Amazonians, he looked very impressive, and personally for me, I felt as if during the first act of the film was the only time Steppenwolf was actually impressive in any showcase surrounding himself having to fight other characters, as I do believe seeing Steppenwolf fight an entire army of Atlanteans and Amazonians, it established him as a character in being truly a force of nature and seeing what he could do. Now, essentially enough, there were comedy portions in this movie that I found to be very entertaining, and the movie was cut down to about 2 hours, as I do think the movie was supposed to be slated originally to be 2.5 hours, but they cut the runtime short. Either way, the movie early on establishes the League, and the only ever time we get to see tension was during the actual recruitment process. And eventually enough, when our characters come to the realization that they're up against a force of nature, that being Steppenwolf and his army, and after Steppenwolf had actually obtained 2 out of the 3 mother boxes, it was then time for Cyborg and of course Bruce Wayne, alongside Wonder Woman, the Flash, and Aquaman, to come together in speaking about if using the mother box to resurrect Superman. Now, for those out there who don't know, Victor Stone, aka Cyborg, was originally killed, but his father was the one that essentially used parts and pieces and studied the kryptonite technology on board of the previous movie's ship in trying to use that to bring his son back, and thus creating Cyborg. Now, Cyborg is very familiar with the power that one of these mother boxes has, and essentially telling everyone else that if they attempt to bring back Superman, it could end up being an end result similar to what we saw with Doomsday. But as Bruce Wayne stated, even if there is a slight chance of bringing him back, they need Superman now more so than ever because of the threats that are inevitable. So what I really enjoyed about this is seeing the way they brought back Superman by doing essentially the exact same thing we saw Luthor do in the previous Batman v Superman film, in trying to use Zod's body to create this monster, except only this time they used Superman's body in essentially dropping one of the mother boxes in the water and thus reanimating his body. Now, I think what was most enjoyable was seeing Superman fight the Justice League, and it was actually very, very awesome. I think what popped me the most was seeing how he was easily able to tank right through Aquaman and Cyborg and even Wonder Woman, and essentially enough, there was a scene where the Flash used his ability to try to get behind Superman, and during the process of slowing down time and as the Flash is running towards Superman's direction, we get to see how Superman catches on by literally locating and figuring out what the Flash was going to do, in literally moving within the flow of time itself in which the Flash was using to get behind Superman. So Superman was able to react quick enough to catch up to the Flash in this film, which essentially goes to show that even towards the very end of the movie, it was hinted that Superman and the Flash are almost relatively on par with each other when it comes to speed, even though in the comic variations we do have different portrayals of the Flash having to be quicker than Superman and vice versa. Here we got to see how literally as Superman's combating the rest of the members, he catches on to what the Flash is doing, begins to drop everybody off left and right and pursuing the Flash and taking him down. So seeing Superman literally repel against Wonder Woman's lasso and having to just one-shot Aquaman, it was insane until of course we got to Batman. Now, what was awesome to see about Batman and Superman's encounter this time was seeing how superior Superman was in comparison to Batman, and having to smack him into a police car, grabbing him by the face, lifting him up in the sky, because at that given point Superman had not remembered anything aside from Batman trying to kill him in the first movie, which is why when Superman grabbed him by the face, he lifted Batman up in the sky and he said, "Why does the world even need you? They don't need you anymore. Let me ask you a question. Do you bleed?" And that's the exact same line that Batman used on Superman in the first film, and now Superman said the exact same thing to Batman in asking him, as picking him up by the face and saying, "Can you bleed?" In which Batman, being Batman, he did not go into this situation without having a backup plan, in which he calls upon Lois Lane, who in which happened to arrive with, of course, Alfred, in trying to calm Superman down, and essentially enough she did in getting Superman to come back to his senses and remembering who he was. So that was a really cool moment, and what was also funny was how Superman held on to Batman's face while he was in the sky, and after he saw Lois Lane, immediately he just threw Batman away as if he was a piece of trash, grabbed onto Lois Lane and they flew away, so we get to see how they're trying to reconnect, and the idea that as the movie progressed, we see how the Justice League is together, and they're all talking about contingency plans about how Superman isn't cooperating and how he's pretty much gone rogue, and it's up to them to stop Steppenwolf in merging all of the mother boxes together and creating havoc, you know, all throughout the world, all throughout the entire universe. And as we see our characters go off and trying to stop Steppenwolf, I think it was pretty uniquely showcased as everyone worked as a cohesive unit and trying to play their own parts in stopping Steppenwolf, as we saw them fight Steppenwolf before, but it was brief until Aquaman came in and flooding the tunnels early on when they first encountered Steppenwolf, and now we get to see how Steppenwolf is pretty much about to do what his ultimate goal originally was in trying to merge the cubes together. And I will say the battles between Batman and Wonder Woman and the Flash and Aquaman and having to fight some of the Parademons, it was okay. I personally felt as if we could have seen more from each individual character in stopping these Parademons, as I do think the biggest letdown was the inevitable fight with Steppenwolf, because by the very end, even though Steppenwolf did overpower the Justice League by himself, until of course Superman arrives, it was really mediocre to see how quickly he was defeated, and the idea that Superman just completely obliterated Steppenwolf in this film. And the reason for that is because there was no sort of offense from Steppenwolf on Superman, not that there should be, but the idea that Superman didn't really do much except by the very end, where we got to see Superman use his freeze breath ability in freezing Steppenwolf's axe, thus making room for Wonder Woman to use her sword in cutting away Steppenwolf's axe. And then thus, after that, we got to see how the Parademons turned on Steppenwolf in trying to engulf on him based on the idea that Batman pointed out that Steppenwolf is emitting fear, and that's what the Parademons are feeding off of. They're feeding off of fear, and by the very end, it's not like we got to see Steppenwolf die, because he got sent away via a vortex as the Parademons were piling on top of him, so that was alright to see. And I think the biggest letdown was by the very end, after the credits, we saw how Lex Luthor was talking to Deathstroke and trying to recruit him and creating their own league, which kind of popped me to see him. But at the same time, similar to Marvel, when they first introduced Thanos, they mentioned Darkseid in the film, but in no way, shape, or form did they even allude to the idea that he's going to be the big baddie who is going to emerge down the line in being the greatest opposition for the Justice League, which I think was stupid, because why would you want to give any sort of airtime, especially following their interaction prior in seeing the Flash race Superman at the very end? That could have been the perfect way or the perfect opportunity to introduce Darkseid, or at least show him similar to how they did with Thanos. And I think to draw the audience in, you need to establish who Darkseid is, because, you know, having to look at Marvel, and I hate comparing Marvel, but they're doing it in the right way, to where they're establishing villains down the line that are going to keep people interested in going back and checking out the films, especially knowing that eventually the Justice League is going to fight Darkseid, similar to how the Avengers are going to fight Thanos. So that was a big missed opportunity. I enjoyed how we saw Lex Luthor on screen with Deathstroke, but that was at the very, very end of the film, whereas I do believe that at some given point they should have alluded to showing Darkseid or doing something with Darkseid that builds towards future films. In terms of character development, I do feel as if every single character in this movie was given a fair chance to be showcased. For example, Aquaman down in Atlantis and fighting against Steppenwolf by himself, Cyborg and having to have this emotional conflict within himself and trying to reconnect with his own emotions and trying to figure out who he is, Batman having to mourn the loss of Superman and believing that it was all his fault. I do think that character development was really, really well done, except for Steppenwolf. Steppenwolf to me just felt really, really flat. He didn't feel as he was larger than life as per se like Doomsday, because when we first got Doomsday, it was essentially very difficult to even defeat him, even while having Superman, Wonder Woman, and Batman fighting him at the same time. I felt as if personally the Doomsday fight with Wonder Woman, Superman, and Batman was a lot better than seeing Steppenwolf fight the Justice League, in my opinion. Overall, out of a 10, I would give this movie a solid 8 out of 10. I mean, the movie was good in my opinion. It was better than Batman vs. Superman. I think the comedy aspects were really good. I do also feel as if the movie did hit the nail on the head when it came down to fundamentals in establishing the Hall of Justice at the very end, in establishing further character development by introducing more characters down the line. I just felt, in terms of the opposition, Steppenwolf was flat, the Parademons were flat. I think that the way the characters were portrayed were very well done. I think the way Superman fought the Justice League was amazing because he showed no signs of remorse, he showed no signs of even caring until he saw Lois Lane. So post your comments down below, guys. What are your overall thoughts on this movie? Was it better than Batman v Superman? What did you guys think about Steppenwolf? What are your overall thoughts on the characters? And what do you believe needs to be done in order to make the next film that much better? Post your comments down below, guys. If you guys are new to this channel, don't forget to go ahead and smash that subscribe button, guys. Tune back in for more if you guys enjoyed. Leave a like as you guys exit the video. Thank you all so much for watching. Tune back in for more, and I'll be seeing you all down in the comment section below. Have a great day, everybody. Peace.